Prior to the purchase of a heavy-duty sewing machine, it's always a great idea to see how it operates. We're going to talk about the strength of the machine when it comes to motor power and its variable speed control. And to do that best, we want to show you the machine in sewing operation. The very first thing we're going to sew is Sunbrella marine grade fabric. This is Pacific blue color. And I'm just going to cut a piece of this. This is a heavy outdoor type material. And we're going to fold it in half. And then we're going to fold it again to 4 layers. And then we're going to fold it one more time so that we've got a nice 8-layer chunk of material there. And notice, fits under the foot nicely. We're going to drop the foot down and let's do some sewing. Straight stitch, forward, reverse, lift the foot and turn, go to a zigzag stitch. Reverse again. Now let's do this nice and slowly so you can see the level of control that I've got. Of course, I can ramp up the speed. So we have great variability in the speed control using the electronic foot control. Now, let's take this out. This is V92 weight thread, and you can see we've got a very nice tight stitch there and a high quality stitch. And that's in 8 layers of fabric. Now, back under the foot, let's take a 4,700 pound, which is a thick, look at the cross section of that webbing, thick webbing. And this is going to show us 2 things. One, it's going to show us more in the way of thickness capability. The other thing it's going to show us is how well that walking foot feeds up into a material. Right over it without any hesitation. Let's do that again. Let's do it in straight stitch this time. Go nice and slow. No problem at all. Feeds right up into it, feeds right off of it without hesitating. No need for the operator to push the material or pull the material through, which is often necessary on machines without the feeding capabilities that this unit has. And again, looking at the underside, we have a very nice stitch. Now let's go back into zigzag mode. And let's also show that not only can you feed into that going forward, but I can feed into it going in reverse and feed off of it in reverse. So you have tremendous ability to handle bumps. And that is a pretty darn thick chunk of fabric that we're dealing with there. 8 layers of Sunbrella with a heavy 4,700 pound jackline webbing on top. Can't even tell where we transitioned into the webbing. Stitch quality looks the same on both sides. We'll set that sample aside, and a lot of people like to use these machines for seating applications, whether we're talking about boat seats out of vinyl or whether we're talking about something in the way of upholstery work. This is a Nalga hide vinyl material, and we'll cut a piece of it. And let's fold this into 8 layers. This will make one heck of a chunk of material, as you can see there. And this is thick enough that it even is pushing our foot height a hair. There we go. And let's go to straight stitch first. Wow. And just take a look at that from the front, and you can see what we're doing here. Fantastically capable machine. Great stitch quality in that mass of material. And we can do this in forward or in reverse. And it still feeds nicely in reverse. And then if I want to come back and hit this in zigzag, I'm going to raise my needle out of the fabric, move to zigzag. I'm going at a nice slow pace, but of course I've still got my variable speed, so I can go nice and slow. And I can ramp up that speed like we were talking about before. My piece of material is not long enough to really showcase that well, but isn't that nice? V92 weight thread with a number 20 needle, and look at that massive amount of material. We often tell people on the phone that the Ultrafeed sewing machine can handle whatever you can stuff under the foot of the machine, and this is a clear example of that. Here's some dense 8-ounce Dacron, and we're going to fold it into a couple, 4, and then 8 layers. Dacron can be a springy material, so not having the edges pressed makes this even more difficult on the machine because it wants to push the presser foot up. But we have a tremendous amount of spring pressure down on the foot, so it'll still grab it and pull it through. Now you'll hear the machine laboring more when we sew Dacron because penetrating that material is really quite difficult. And I often, at boat shows, to show people how hard this is to do, a great stitch, is I will take my 8 layers of Dacron, put the foot down on it, and then I'll rotate the wheel so that the needle's right on the fabric and tell the person to crank it through manually. And it really does take a lot of force to get the needle to go through the fabric. This is a great way to see just how powerful the motor system is on the machine because it takes so much force by hand. Most people have a hard time believing that once you press on the foot control that you have that much visible power in order to penetrate the material. And I want to show one final example of material, which is window material, but before we do that, let's just really show you what you can do. Here's that 8 layers of Dacron with that webbing on top. Fantastically capable machine. Here we have some clear vinyl material. This is a 30 gauge clear vinyl. So in order to really make it a bit thicker, let's fold it in half so that we're actually simulating about a 60 gauge. And typically you would sew window material to up to maybe 4 layers of sunbrella. So let's just put this on top. We'll even step it a little bit so that we're going from 1 layer into the glass and then up into the 4 layers. And you would typically sew this in a straight stitch, although we could do it in a zigzag as well. And the point here is that you don't lose any feeding capability with the glass. A lot of people think of glass as being a sticky material and making it difficult for the machine to feed through. But not only are we showcasing the power of the machine, we're showcasing really the feeding ability here. And it doesn't matter whether I do it with the glass up or down. And let's even do some zigzag here. She still feeds beautifully right through the entire assembly. So we've shown you the machine in operation, but what we want to talk about now is why you have so much power, and the secret to the power is related to Sailrite's Power Plus flywheel and our patented posi pin clutching assembly. The Power Plus flywheel, basically the secret to it is it's larger diameter than a standard flywheel, and it has a belt track that is toothed that allows for an XL timing belt so that we don't get any slippage between the belt drive, the flywheel, and the upper shaft. But the "and the upper shaft" statement is the big key. In order to keep from getting slippage between the flywheel and the upper shaft, we need to make sure that we can positively lock the flywheel to the upper shaft. We do that with a pin. This pin, when pushed through the flywheel and into the mating bushing hole that's on the upper shaft, locks the two together so it's impossible for you to get any slippage here. So this patented arrangement from Sailrite, and exclusively from Sailrite, is a huge portion of the power advantage that we get with our sewing machine. The next thing that adds to our power advantage is the fact that our motor is a high quality 1.5 amp motor with an 8mm shaft, and they are built well, and they're very durable. We have extremely few issues with motors over the life of our sewing machine, and that motor is attached to the machine with a bracket that is just intelligent. I'm going to take this all apart so I can show you those individual components. With the drive system apart, you can now see the posi pin bushing, you can see the jack driver idler pulley, you can see the motor bracket, and let's talk about each of those components. First thing is, with the bushing, you'll notice here I now have the Power Plus wheel in my hand, and there's a hole pattern here, and you can pick any of these holes to push the posi pin through. When it's lined up with one of the holes in the bushing here, that's how you get that direct drive connection that I was talking about earlier. So it's a very simple system, but an extremely effective system. Power Plus wheel is a light wheel, but a large diameter, and they work just extremely well. The idler pulley assembly here is also cogged, as you can see, so there's no belt slippage here. I'm sorry, I've got my machine sitting on my table rather precariously. But you'll notice that we have a very substantial gear reduction system here. And the way the motor bracket is set up, the motor can be slid in and out in order to control the tension on the belt, and it is attached in a very secure manner to the machine. Also, our motor bracket acts somewhat as a stand for the machine. When you tilt it back, it keeps the machine from toppling over in the case, as you can see here. Our motor wiring comes up to a connection block here that has a male mate that plugs in that is completely grounded. You can see the ground wire here, and if we traced our cords back to the wall, you would see that we have a ground pin. So we are grounding the motor and all the way through to the variable speed foot control. The other thing I want to point out here is the length of the cord for the foot control. Sailrite produces its own foot control and wiring harnesses for the Ultrafeed machine, and one of the advantages to doing that is that our cords are a full foot longer than anything else in the marketplace, which means that you can put your machine up on a bench and expect the foot control to reach the floor. So in a nutshell, the Ultrafeed LSZ-1 sewing machine is the most powerful portable sewing machine in the marketplace due to the features that we've just seen. Thanks for watching.